A cold shiver crawls down my spine every time I remember the first night I saw the child in the mirror, a child who wasn't behind me and wasn't anywhere in the room, yet stared back at me with eyes that looked like they'd been waiting for me for years. I didn't understand what I was looking at. I didn't even want to breathe. But the moment I blinked, he tilted his head slightly, as if acknowledging me, as if greeting me. That was the moment something inside me whispered that this was not a trick of light, not imagination, not fatigue, this was real. It began 3 weeks earlier, when I moved back into my childhood home after my mother passed away. The house was exactly as I remembered it, quiet, yet it carried an unfamiliar heaviness, like it had aged with secrets I had never been told. On my first night, I noticed the old hallway mirror still hanging crooked on the wall. My mother used to warn me never to touch it, never to move it, and never to look into it after midnight. I thought it was just superstition, one of her strange rules, until I saw my own reflection flicker for a split second like something else had moved inside it. I tried to shake the feeling off, blaming lack of sleep and stress, but the next night it happened again, and this time it wasn't my reflection flickering. It was a small, pale face appearing behind mine, too low to be an adult, too still to be living. I spun around immediately. Nothing. The room was empty, silent, ordinary. But when I turned back toward the mirror, that same child stared up at me from the glass, expressionless, unmoving, impossible. And even though he didn't speak, I felt something, an emotion that didn't belong to me. It was loneliness. Deep, hollow loneliness. Instead of running, something made me lean closer, studying every detail, his dark hair, the faint bruise under his eye, the way his lips parted like he wanted to say something but couldn't. It wasn't fear that held me there, it was the strange familiarity of his presence. I didn't know who he was yet, or why he appeared only in the mirror, but in that moment I understood one thing clearly: this child wasn't haunting me. He was trying to tell me something. And whatever it was, it had waited years for me to return. I first noticed the child in the mirror on a quiet Tuesday evening, the kind of night when the world feels paused, and every sound in the house becomes louder than usual. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, when my eyes drifted upward toward the bathroom mirror, and that's when I saw him, standing behind me. A small boy, no older than 7, pale skin, dark messy hair, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned white shirt, and completely still. His eyes were the first thing that froze me, wide, glassy, unblinking, staring directly into mine through the reflection. My breath caught in my throat, and the toothbrush fell from my hand, clattering against the sink. Instinctively, I whipped around fast, sharp, certain that I would see him standing there behind me. But the bathroom was empty. The doorway was empty. The hallway beyond was silent. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the empty space where a child had been only a heartbeat ago. I turned back to the mirror slowly, dread crawling up my spine. He was still there. Still standing. Still staring. But now, in the reflection, he was closer than before, close enough that I could see the faint outline of bruises on his neck, faint fingerprints that looked far too real to be a trick of the light. My legs felt weak, and an instinctive fear shot through me, not the kind of fear that screams, but the kind that tightens around your chest like rope. "Hello," I whispered, though I don't know why. He didn't answer. He blinked once, so slowly it barely looked human. And then he lifted his hand, not in a wave, but in a small, trembling point, directing his finger toward the hallway behind me again. This time, terror kept me from turning around. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I froze, stuck between fear of looking and fear of not looking. The child's lips parted as if he was about to speak, but no sound came. Instead, a soft knock echoed from somewhere down the hall. Once, twice. 3 times. The boy's eyes in the mirror widened, and he stepped backward, melting into the shadows of the reflection until he vanished completely. My breath came out in shaky gasps. I turned around again, forcing my feet to move. The hallway was still empty, but the knock had been real. I could feel it in the air. Something had been there. Something still was. I took a few hesitant steps, each one creaking the old wooden floor beneath me. My house had never felt so suffocating. At the end of the hallway, my bedroom door stood slightly open, just enough for darkness to pool out of it like spilled ink. A chill breeze drifted past me, even though no windows were open. I had seen that child. I knew I had. And no matter how much I tried to rationalize its reflection tricks, exhaustion, imagination, the truth hit me with a cold certainty. He hadn't been looking at me. He'd been warning me about something standing in the dark behind me. And whatever it was, I knew the mirror wasn't done showing me things I didn't want to see. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the boy in the mirror. Every time I walked past a reflective surface, my bathroom mirror, a store window, even the back of my phone, I caught myself glancing, half expecting to see him again. But he never appeared. Not even a flicker, not even a shadow shaped like him. A strange mix of relief and disappointment settled in my chest. Relief because the whole experience felt like something no sane person should want to encounter again. Disappointment because somewhere deep inside, I felt that the boy wasn't trying to scare me. He looked scared himself. The kind of fear that sinks into a child's bones when they lay alone in the dark. By the 3rd night, the house felt unusually quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. I stood in front of the living room mirror, almost challenging it to show me something. But all I saw was my tired face staring back. I turned away, switched off the lights, and went to bed, convincing myself it had all been stress or exhaustion. But at exactly 2:13 a.m., I woke up to the soft sound of movement, tiny taps like fingertips brushing against glass. My heart pounded. The sound didn't come from my bedroom window or door, it came from my dresser mirror. I sat up slowly, my throat dry, and stared across the room. The mirror was completely dark except for the faint glow of the streetlight outside. Then something shifted inside it, something small. With trembling legs, I got out of bed and walked closer until I was standing just 2 feet from the glass. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but then the darkness inside the mirror began to lighten, as though someone was walking through a fog behind it. A hand pressed against the inside of the glass, small, pale, and shaking. Then the boy's face appeared again, but it was different this time. His eyes were swollen, like he had been crying for hours. His lips parted, and though no sound came out, I could clearly read the word he was trying to say, help. My entire body locked. I whispered, barely audible, "What do you want me to do?" He looked over his shoulder as if someone or something was standing in the darkness behind him. Fear washed across his face so intensely that I instinctively stepped closer to protect him, even though he was trapped behind a reflection. His eyes shot back to me and widened in panic as he urgently shook his head and pointed downward, as if warning me about something near my feet. I froze. Then, very slowly, I looked down. The floor in my room was normal, no shadows, no movement. But when I looked back up at the mirror, the boy's expression had changed again. His face was filled with despair, the kind a child shouldn't know. He raised his hand again and traced letters on the inside of the mirror. I watched carefully as each one appeared, fogged and trembling. Auntie. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. "Who's here?" I whispered. But before I could finish, something behind me creaked a soft, deliberate sound, like someone stepping on my wooden bedroom floor. I spun around instantly. No one was there. But when I turned back to the mirror, the boy had vanished, swallowed by the darkness again, leaving only my pale, terrified reflection staring back at me. The next night, I stayed awake longer than usual, pretending to read while keeping one eye on the hallway. My mother walked past my door once, twice, then finally turned off all the lights before going to bed. The house settled into its familiar nighttime silence, creaking wood, humming refrigerator, soft wind tapping the windows. But even with all those ordinary sounds, I felt something else creeping into the air. A pressure. A presence. As if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to finally step toward the mirror. I carried the small hallway mirror into my room, propped it up on my dresser, and sat down in front of it. My reflection stared back, nervous eyes, tight jaw, breath shallow. For a long moment nothing happened, and I almost laughed at myself for being scared. Maybe this whole thing was just my mind reacting to stress. Maybe the child had simply been cracks in old glass, nothing more. But just when I leaned closer to adjust the frame, my reflection suddenly flickered one quick distortion, like a screen glitch. My heart froze. And then he appeared. The small boy stood exactly where my reflection had been, replacing me entirely. His face was clearer now, messy dark hair, pale skin, soft round cheeks, and eyes that were too tired for someone so young. He looked around my room inside the mirror as if he already knew it, as if he had memorized it long before I ever lived there. Slowly, his gaze drifted down toward something at the bottom of the mirror frame. I hesitated, then followed his line of sight. There, faint but unmistakable, were fingerprints, tiny ones pressed against the inside of the glass. Not on the outside, dot inside. I whispered, "Who are you?" The boy lifted his head, and for the first time, he spoke. His voice was soft and distant, as if echoing through a long tunnel. "You know me." A cold shock ran through my entire body. I shook my head. "I've never seen you before." The boy blinked slowly. "You forgot." The word forgot hit me like a blow. Forgotten what? A memory, a dream, a person? My chest tightened as I forced myself to look deeper into his eyes, those tired, lonely eyes that felt like they were carrying something heavy. Something I should have known. "What do you want?" I asked. He stepped closer to the mirror, so close that it felt like he was about to step out. "To come home, but this is my home," I whispered. The boy nodded sadly. And it was mine. My skin prickled, and my heartbeat hammered in my ears. I wanted to look away, to run out of the room, but something held me there. Some pull, some connection. As I watched, the boy reached toward the mirror surface with shaking fingers. His hand pressed against it gently, leaving another small, perfect print from the inside. Before I could respond, the mirror suddenly blurred again, and my own face snapped back into place. The boy was gone. I stared at my reflection, pale and stunned, breath trembling. But then I noticed something else, something far worse. The tiny fingerprints on the inside of the mirror were still there. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. Every mirror in my house was covered with sheets or turned toward the wall, yet the weight of the child's presence followed me everywhere like cold breath against the back of my neck. By the 3rd night, I understood something clearly. He didn't want to scare me. He wanted something else. Something unfinished. And the only way to find the truth was to face him again. So I uncovered the mirror in my hallway, the largest one in the house, and sat directly in front of it, the room silent except for the faint ticking of the radiator. I turned off the lamp. Only the grey glow of streetlight leaked through the curtains. I whispered, "I'm here. You can show yourself now." For a moment, nothing happened. My reflection stared back at me, tired, pale, trembling. And then, like a watercolor bleeding through paper, the child slowly appeared beside my reflection, even though the space next to me in the real world remained empty. His head was bowed, his small hands clasped as if he were praying. When he finally lifted his face, tears streaked down his cheeks. I swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" Instead of speaking, he raised a trembling hand and pressed it against the surface of the mirror. Without thinking, I reached out and pressed my palm against his. My skin touched cold glass, but in the reflection, I felt warmth, as if his hand were truly on mine. Suddenly, the mirror began to darken, swirling like ink mixed into water. The child stepped aside, and behind him, a blurry image started forming, a burning house, flames crawling up wooden walls, smoke choking the air. A woman was screaming for help. A man was banging on the front door. And in the window, barely visible, a small boy crying silently, unable to escape. My chest tightened. It felt too real. Too personal. "This is your past," I whispered. The child nodded, then pointed directly at me. My breath caught. What does this have to do with me? The scene in the mirror shifted abruptly. Now it was a hospital hallway. Nurses rushed through a set of sliding doors. A woman lay on a stretcher, holding a newborn baby. And walking beside her, carrying a second infant wrapped in blue cloth, was my father. My eyes widened. No, that can't be. The mirror flickered again, showing my father handing one baby to a nurse while carrying the other me away, shielding me from the chaos behind him. The nurse holding the first infant was shouting, panicked, "We need help." "This one isn't breathing right," the image blurred. The boy in the mirror lowered his head. A sickening realization tightened around my heart. The boy wasn't a stranger, he was my twin. A twin who didn't survive. A twin I never knew existed. A twin lost in a fire caused by a short circuit in the nursery incubator room, a tragedy my parents had buried so deep even I had never heard it. My throat closed as I whispered, "You were my brother." The child's expression softened relief, sadness, and longing all in one. He stepped closer, and the mirror brightened with a warm glow that washed over both of us. I felt something inside me loosen, like a knot finally untying after years of silent tension. He lifted one hand, brushing his fingers across my reflection's cheek, and then slowly, peacefully he began to fade. "No, wait," I whispered, leaning closer. "Are you leaving?" His final smile was gentle, grateful. And then he mouthed a single word, "Thank you." The mirror cleared instantly. Only my reflection remained. But I no longer looked alone. I looked whole. As the rain eased into a soft drizzle, I stood alone in the dim hallway, staring at the antique mirror that had nearly destroyed everything I believed about myself. The house felt quieter than it had in months, almost peaceful, as if the storm inside it had finally taken its last breath. My hands were still trembling, my heartbeat uneven, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I knew the truth now. Every terrifying reflection, every whisper in the dark, every glimpse of the child staring back at me, it had all been a plea for help, not a threat. The mirror's surface shimmered faintly, as if acknowledging me. And then, slowly, the boy appeared again, no flicker, no distortion, no confusion. Just a small, pale child with eyes full of something I had never expected to see in a ghost, relief. He didn't look frightened anymore. He didn't look lost. He looked free. "Thank you," he whispered, though his lips barely moved. The sound didn't echo in the hallway, it echoed inside my mind, gentle and warm, like a memory returning to its rightful place. I felt tears rise, but I didn't wipe them away. He deserved to be seen clearly, without fear or blinking. "You're safe now," I whispered back. "You don't have to stay." For a moment, he smiled in that small, grateful way only a child can, pure, quiet, and heartbreakingly honest. Then a soft glow spread through the mirror, bright enough to make me step back, but not enough to hurt. His form dissolved into the light, breaking apart like dust rising toward the sun. When it faded, the mirror reflected only me, and for the first time in months, I recognized myself. I thought that was the end of it. But as I turned to leave, I felt a light tug on my sleeve from nowhere, like a tiny hand saying goodbye. The warmth lingered for a moment, then disappeared, leaving me standing in a home that suddenly felt whole again. Restored. Balanced. I walked outside, breathing in the cold night air, feeling the rain touch my face. Everything that happened felt unreal, like a nightmare I had wandered through half awake. But it was real. And the boy was real too. Maybe not in the way people would ever understand, but in the way that matters emotionally, spiritually, painfully. Some souls don't want revenge. They only want to be remembered. Before I end this story, let me tell you this. Sometimes the reflections we fear the most are the ones that lead us to the truth about ourselves and to the people we never knew we lost. If you felt this journey, if it gave you chills or touched your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss another mystery story like this one. Your support helps me bring more emotional and thrilling stories every week. Thank you for watching, and remember, every reflection has a story.